Hi, I'm Perry Samson. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan. And if the weather is good where you are, I'm a meteorologist. If it's not, I do educational technology. Um, Today, you might wonder what I'm doing at this conference for the talks this morning on learning analytics are just stimulating to me about how do we know whether students are going to do well in our courses or not. And being a meteorologist, I feel like while this is excellent progress, as with trying to forecast the weather, one of the issues we have is, yes, we can build new models, and those models are getting better, but they get better particularly faster when we have more data. And I would like to argue, I don't think we have enough data yet. There are more sets of data. So today I'm going to talk about, I feel like a farmer. I'm collecting more crops in the field in order to be able to make things like the data that we can use for doing learning analytics. And I'm going to use AI in a novel approach, I think. This is a project dubbed Learning Clues. And it's funded first by the University of Michigan College of Engineering, got us started. And then the NSF has a program called Partnerships for Innovation. Now, if you don't know about that program, it's just a quick advertisement for them. It's a worthy program. If you have research on campus that you think would be of value to a wider audience, and you want to think about how beyond the grant is going to work, this PFI program helps guide you towards how to take your innovations on campus and make them sustainable, make them go beyond your particular situation. So we're doing this is building it at the University of Michigan, and I'll show you how that works at Michigan right at first, but also the mind for how is this thing going to live the long life I think it needs. And the whole purpose of what I'm doing here centers on the concept of help seeking. You know, students come to campus and these students aren't always well versed on how to study. Maybe don't have good family support. Their family didn't go to college. Maybe they're coming from a school that was a bit weaker, and they wind up in the college situation and not quite ready. They don't know how to study. They don't know how to connect what they're doing in the classroom to other resources. So what we're trying to do is think about how to build contextual connections between what's discussed in our class sessions and external resources. And there's a lot of external resources. Gosh knows, this is my 42nd year on the faculty, and I am forever putting what I think are really interesting articles into Canvas, our LMS, to make available to my students, and articles, PDF articles, etc. But the students don't necessarily make the linkage unless I think to make it myself between what I'm making available to them and what we're doing in the classroom. So this is about that. I like to think of what I'm doing here. What I'm going to show you is sort of the mayonnaise in this sandwich. It's a way that multiple education platforms can know about each other and communicate between each other contextually. And I understand the chat window is open, so you're bound to have questions. My students are always telling me I'm confusing, so I don't doubt it. Just don't be shy about posing those questions. First of all, the students have an environment that is just ripe with various platforms that they can use in their classroom. First of all, in your courses, you probably have some way of capturing what's being discussed or talked about in class, the lecture capture. If you don't, you should. I mean, this is something that students very much value, is the capacity to go back and view these lectures. On top of that, they probably have other resources like textbooks, and Vital Source is a group that does the online textbooks. OpenStax has free textbooks for students. You've got LMS, Canvas, D2L. There's a long list of here. If your icon is missing, it's not because I'm sliding you. It's just these are the easiest ones I could grab. And then they might want to do self-assessment, Quizlet, Chegg. There's lots of options for that. And or to go off to video, see something in YouTube or TED Talk or LinkedIn Learning, all sorts of good resources out there that they might want to connect to based on what was talked about in class. And that's the essence of what we're talking about here. The software that I've developed, is not my students have developed with my encouragement, does this. We take the class video, and that class video generally comes with a transcript. It's a machine-based transcript, and most of the vendors have this as an option. And generally, it just comes with, if you choose to. So we could take that transcript, and we take the transcript and we run some, we run a lot of artificial intelligence on that transcript using natural language processing and a bunch of other skills. I work with other faculty here at Michigan to create this system which parses what's being said in class. What we do is literally listen to maybe the first 3 or 4 lectures in a course. We take that information and we have a way of then making an estimate of what's the discipline of this course, biostatistics or whatever. And then based on that, okay, in that field, then if that's the field, what are the key words in that field? So in effect, sort of reverse engineering what the learning objectives of the course might be. And we can start watching for those words, what words we decide are important in the course. And we can divide this up and store this metadata in our system. Now, in some classes, the class video transcripts are either not available or the transcription is poor because the microphone didn't get turned on, the speaker is being too quiet, or maybe there's a really strong accent, and for whatever reason, the transcription process isn't very good. We have a second technique where we take the video from class and we're able to take that and tear it apart and identify the words which were actually visually presented during class time and when they presented, and all that goes also into our database. So we have both what was said during class and what was visually presented during class. And that gives us a lot of information about what was probably important in that class. We can grab, for example, the titles of the slides, which gives us a big hint. Lots of good information being stored. Now, this is the kind of information which is a backbone for the learning analytics that this crowd is probably interested in. Now, at the University of Michigan, we're blessed with the fact that our College of Engineering has figured out a way to do the lecture capture for us. It's a great system, well designed, but there are a lot of other lecture capture vendors out there. I've listed a few of them here. What we do is we don't care who your vendor is or how you're doing the capture in your classroom. We ingest that into our system with the permission of the institution, of course, and store this as metadata about what was being talked about in class or what was being visually presented in class. And from that, we've created an API, which allows then us to build other tools which would consume that metadata, like a search engine. Search engine, a student wants to find a particular term in class, they can use a search engine to go and look for that term, and it takes you to the spot in the video where the term you're searching for was discussed. And second, I'm going to show you today a study guide we're building, which students could use to help prepare themselves for whatever assessments they're going to have. Now, this API that we're building and appreciate that I'm just a meteorologist here, but this is trying to tie together the disparate educational platforms that we use and that are in the students' learning ecosystem. So we can go two ways with this. I mean, there's Canvas, there's your LMS, Vital Source is a textbook world company. And gosh knows there are other platforms that are represented here today at the Unison meeting. And the whole point is this, is if with one of these platforms, let's take Vital Source. Vital Source does the textbooks. We could add in the textbook a link. So if you click on the word in the textbook, it would open up your own instructor talking about that term. So this allows us to go multiple directions here, tying together multiple platforms contextually based on what's talked about during the classroom experience. An example, this is what it looks like at Michigan. And I should tell you that this started already a year and a half ago. We started building the system this semester, which is just ending. We were live in 466 courses at Michigan. And at Michigan, their homegrown lecture capture system has its own LTI link in Canvas. You click on the lecture capture link, it would give you a list of, well, let's just go live here. That's why, let me go live. This is my course that just ended. And here's this lecture capture button. If I go to it, it gives a list of here are all the lecture recordings from my course. But we've added this button here for search recordings. And now a student comes in and they want to find, let's say, Hadley cell, which is an important topic in meteorology. And we click that and it shows you which lectures was that mentioned in. We go click on the moments here. It shows you exactly when in the lecture it was discussed. If I click on any one of these links, it takes you to that spot when it was being discussed. So for the student, this allows them rapid access to go find what was that moment? Where was that moment during class when he talked about the Hadley cell? And so we built this search engine as one of the tools that accesses that API I just talked about. It goes and says, give me what you know about Hadley cell, and it returns the information here about which moments in class were probably the best to represent that. Let's go back to my slides now. Oops. And so this semester we're trying it at Michigan. The goals going forward are that we want to build a system so that we would be analyzing classroom recordings over a long time period, so that a student, maybe in their senior year, something comes up about Planck's law, and you could look in Planck's law and it would remind you what it was talked about in your current courses, or maybe it was talked about multiple semesters ago. And you'll be able to go back through the trajectory of the courses that you have been in over your time at the university, as a way for you to go back in time. Or even alumni potentially would be able to go back and find material that they should have learned a long time ago, but maybe just forgot along the way. Now, for the Unison, the interesting part here is this collects information about, well, what are students studying for? Which students are actually asking questions? Which students are going back to their assets? And it asks the students as they're using these assets, was this helpful? Did it answer your question? Which feeds back into our system so we can understand which of the assets really are helpful to this student. And which other assets do they look at, and how many the times they look at it. This is information that is going to be helpful to the student, obviously, but potentially also to the instructor, who would be able to see what are students searching for, what parts maybe they're most confused about, and what resources are they finding most helpful. This is where we start collecting much more data than we've been collecting up till now. And it gives us more information about, well, how does that vary from student to student? Do certain students find video more helpful than maybe going to the pages in their textbook? These are the sorts of areas where I was hoping to engage with you in some conversation today, because my goal is to think about how do we take this system at Michigan and make it more broadly available. To start with, we're working with not only College of Engineering, we're working with the medical school at Michigan. They have a lot of courses in their first year of the medical program. And then as the students go off and do their rounds in the second year, they would like to be able to go back. Now they really need to know the fact, go back and find that moment in lecture relevant to some case that they're dealing with. The Masters for Applied Data Science at Michigan, likewise. In their case, I mean, up to this point, we want to keep a very tight boundary. We don't want anyone to be able to see the content in a course except those students who are in the course. We understand that there are concerns, there will be concerns from the faculty that, oh my gosh, the material is getting spread too widely. No, it's only going to be available to students who are in your course, unless you're in a program like the Masters of Applied Data Science. They would like their students to have access to all the courses in their program, whether they've taken that course or not. That comes back to an institutional decision. But the point is, you're giving students the opportunity here to be able to search contextually in their own learning ecosystem.
Perry, we have a question here that popped up in chat. Priscilla said, I missed the first 15 minutes, but I was curious, does this tool search across video captions and any course content that the student has access to?
It searches across the transcription. If on top of that, you are having somebody make it into a more accurate captioned system, then yes, it would also be able to access that as well. And yes, the whole goal here is, and maybe I should have said it more clearly, but that system that we've built does, it listens to what's being said through the transcriptions, what's being presented visually. We also have tools that actually mine what's in your Canvas site. Do you have PDFs in the Canvas site? Do you have links in the Canvas site? And we can go mine that as well and analyze what are the concepts on your website, so that we can connect the student from what was said in class today to the documents that you made available in your LMS, for example. And or if you're using a textbook, it would be able to identify to the student, here are the pages in the textbook which are relevant to what's being discussed in class today. And we're just scratching the surface here of any content that might be relevant. Maybe you've got a student response system, and there are questions being asked in that. Well, how are those questions related to other parts of the student's ecosystem? Again, we're just trying to allow these connections to a neural network of what the student should be learning.
I could imagine some interesting visualizations there, right? As you come, not just looking through the videos and the transcripts, but how it maps into all those other tools that you just mentioned. That's really interesting. We have another question here too from Caitlin. You mentioned that the AI would decide what learning objectives are key based on the first few videos in the course. Is it possible to input your own learning objectives so you can direct the artificial intelligence to focus on specific content or specific levels of understanding?
You have uncovered one of my hidden agendas here. And that is that we're doing this in the hopes that we put the fear of God into the instructor, who would then be able to upload maybe the glossary of what important terms are in the course and or their learning objectives. And if they do that, then it saves us trying to guess and makes the system more accurate. So yeah, we're doing this And also, there's no hidden agenda here. I've been building educational technologies for a while, and I am literally tired of walking up and down the halls and trying to convince my colleagues to try something new in the classroom. They're busy people. They have many other things to do, and new technologies for the classroom don't necessarily don't seem like a good use of their time. This tool and what we're building is entirely aimed at the student. That the student will be able to use this tool, find the information they want. If the instructor wants to get feedback, that's certainly available. If the instructor wants to participate and offer their learning objectives, God bless them. That's what we want to have happen. I'm just not going to count on them. And now that I'm in a grumpy mood, let me just fire up the fact here that faculty will have concerns. That seems to be our modus operandi. And the first one is going to be that, oh my gosh, my lectures are precious. I just don't want anybody seeing them. So I have to protect that. And yes, for sure, understand that what we're doing is behind firewalls is this information that you have chosen to have your class recorded. All we're doing is making that content more easily available to the student. Nobody is leaking any of your information out, any of the content you've created out beyond the students in your own class, unless your organization, department decides that they want to do that with your permission. That's bottom line. Students should be responsible for creating their own knowledge. Damn it! Why are you doing it for them? Well, they should be, but they're not. And we have tried. Those who teach understand that you do try. That's your day job, is get them to want to learn your material. But many students just need a model. They need to see how they might do that. And by showing them the web of information relevant to what was talked about in class today, and the goals of this from the beginning were built on the literature on help seeking. So we're only trying to help students understand what they might do next if they want to learn the material more deeply. And lastly, I don't want my institution or anyone else being able to view my classroom. And I hear that. It's very personal how I teach, and maybe I'm not comfortable having the world see how I'm teaching. And in this day and age, where the politics are such that there are groups out there who want to see how we're teaching, no, that's not going to happen. We're going to keep the locks on it so only the instructor and their students can see what's being discussed in the classroom. So I'm sure there are more. And by the way, just to remind you that if you think of other concerns that I should be thinking about, please let me share those with me. And if you have questions, keep popping them in here.
We do, Perry, have a couple of not questions, I think just sort of comments. Jess said, just a theoretical comment, if students carried these databases from year to year, grade to grade, school to school, what would it mean to scaffold learning, build on existing knowledge, and assessing growth? It's an interesting comment here.
I will leave that as an excellent comment.
Yeah, we have Andy sort of indicated our med school, and Andy's at Penn State, has been working with a contractor to crawl Canvas materials and provide a search interface for students. This looks like it goes a few steps beyond that tool.
Yeah, it does. And it turns out that it's fairly easy to crawl Canvas, which might put the fear of God into you, but it's not too hard to do that. Now we crawl it and we collect the information and we process it to see what's being discussed in these documents on Canvas. We don't keep any of it. We simply keep the metadata so we know where to point you. We don't want to be storing any information. We just want to be able, we know this is on a video on Kaltura. We could send you to Kaltura at the particular moment. Or we know this is on a document in your LMS. We can send you there. We just want to be able to point you to the right place.
So I actually have a question. Before coming to Unison, I was at Penn State, and I see some of my colleagues here in the window. It's great to see everyone virtually. We had a project that we were calling it Spectrum, a prototype that took transcripts from an entire semester's worth of Zoom recordings, right? This happened mostly before the pandemic, but now there's a lot more recordings available to feed into it. And our goal was actually to provide entire semester visualizations back to the teachers, right? So we were providing different types of language modeling, such as topic modeling, such as when we saw questions appear, things that help with pacing, trying to understand the flow of the course across a semester, across topics, and multi-speaker analysis. You know, how many different voices did we hear? I was just curious if you've ever thought about you know, taking what you've done here and repositioning it for different end users, right? Such as potentially the instructors themselves.
Again, we're building an API so that if somebody wants to come and build a tool, such as you're saying, that would be possible. I'm building the database of that can be mined, that database that can be consumed by other tools. And well, let me just continue on here with my time. I can show you what we are in our roadmap is that we went back to the students and asked them, and did a survey of hundreds and hundreds of students at Michigan. Is a study guide made available before exams for your hardest course? And you can see that, you know, for like 2/3 the course is no, that's not made available. And asked, would you prefer a study guide is available in your course? And yeah, like duh, they would like a study guide. So that led us to think about how do we take the content then that we've created, and this is the system that we expect to have ready for fall, where the student can choose some period of days, some number of lectures, and say, I've got an exam coming up. Let me cover it. Let me go back and review over these many days or lectures, the material that was covered. And we would have accumulated day by day what topics were covered and be able to provide back to the student then a list of the words which are concepts studied over that time period. And you can decide which of these you want to go deeper into. And it automatically then generates a study guide of the terms that were covered over that period of the course. And another place we want to scare the instructor is we generate definitions automatically, because we have our own version of Wikipedia. We just go and suck the first few sentences out of Wikipedia and make a definition and offer a link then if the instructor wants to upload their own CSV file of definitions. So that's a first level of definition. And over here on the right then, with that, we can also offer them links back to the places in your lectures where that was being discussed. We can links to the pages in your textbook if your textbook's in VitalSource, for example, and searching YouTube or other resources here. The whole idea is, again, this is that contextual linkage from the things you're studying to other resources. And this is a work in progress. This is certainly not a completed picture yet, but we're just thinking through, you know, and for the older people in the crowd, it's like the prune thing where, you know, is too many, is, you know, one enough, is how many links should we put on the page in order to make it useful to the student? And at the same time, collect information back about, did they find it useful? How did they look at it a long time? Other kinds of measures we can take back to help guide our machine learning. So the next semester, we would make hopefully even better choices about links that would be best for the students. And we asked the students, well, what would you want in a study guide system? And I'm not going to linger on this page, but they would love to have sample questions. So, you know, if you've got a vendor who has a large number of questions, this is great, because then based on what was talked about in class today, you know, here are 5 questions you should be able to answer. Students want that, and we could make that happen if you've got the question bank. outlines of topics covered, summaries of each class. All these things are in progress here in our system. Now, there's a bunch of different environments that we know campuses have, and I'm going to just run through this. Michigan has one where we roll our own here. We create our own, we capture our own videos, and they do the transcriptions in-house. So we just take that transcription, we do our magic thing here. We create the study guide for students, and then link this from that back into the videos on campus. But not many other campuses, I think, have their own lecture capture system. Most of them have vendors, and the vendors, they collect the video. And again, they may or may not create the transcriptions. Most do, I think, if you ask for it. And then the campus controls, well, which courses do you want to make available? We get the transcriptions, we make the study guide, and it can point back to the vendor and say, oh, go back to this vendor at this point in their recorded video. And the student can then easily find the material they're looking for. And on campus, you have multiple vendors, doesn't matter, we can send you to the vendor that's relevant. Notice the cost. I'm not a good businessman. It's free, but it's free like a puppy. I'm going to explain that in a moment here about my thinking about how we're going to make this available to other campuses. In fact, let me just jump past this because I just have other examples here. Vendors might have the video, but they're not doing transcription. Well, we could do the transcriptions for you. They'd have to add the cost of that send you back to the video, or you don't want to store the videos at all. We could store the video, but that's going to cost storage. It's other models we're thinking about for how we could make this available to other campuses. We are, in the call to action here is we are accepting applications now. The National Science Foundation wants to see us, move on and make this available on other campuses. So the next step in that process is to find some other schools. I like to refer to it as schools with a sense of humor who are willing to play with us. You have to pass a physical. The physical is that you have to be willing to provide access to class transcripts if you can from your vendor or your source. You have to be able to send students to specific timestamps in the video host. Go ask your video host, you're using, I don't know, Kaltura, can I send a student to 15 minutes and 38 seconds into a particular video? If that's possible, then fine. Then they can continue to store your video, and we just simply point the student to that host. You need to be willing to identify some initial courses where we could take this for a test drive. And the ability to add, we're building an LTI compliant application that you can put into Canvas, or well, I presume you're all in Canvas because you're part of Unison. The idea will be LTI compliant. It would go into those courses, and from that link, they would be able to access both the search tool and a study guide tool. And a willingness to meet with us periodically to discuss how's it going, what are the problems. We understand new technologies, things are not going to work all the time. There's a email link here at the bottom, and that's the off-campus entity where this thing is going to be housed for campuses outside of the University of Michigan. So this is, again, an idea here for which we could use some partnership with other institutions, and we'll pick, one or two or three for the coming semester in the fall and the beyond, where we can just learn how to make this work. Will this work? What are the issues here? What are the holdups? What are the concerns? And together figure out if this could work on a large scale. All right. How are we doing for questions?
Good. We have about 9 minutes left, and there's a question here from Patricia. It sounds like a time saver for students as they learn. And then the question part maybe takes away the need for them to develop the right skills to some extent. Question mark.
Well, that's I don't know the answer to that question. It's a researchable question. In our research, we certainly know that students want this. And we did out focus groups on over 100 students in the past few weeks. And of them, 52%, this was a must-have in at least some of their courses. So yeah, so are they doing this because it makes their life easier, or possibly? Is that bad? Does this help them learn or create a model for how they might go out and look for other material in the courses where this isn't available? I would like to believe that, but that's a sort of a research question, that's worth asking. And I'd be happy to work with anybody who wants to write the grant proposal to go and ask those questions, because those are excellent questions.
Yeah, and Patricia also sort of summarizing here, assuming this is like an opt-in kind of thing, right? So if you're at the University of Michigan, this is something that if I'm a teacher, I would opt in on sort of making this available to my students, right?
No. This is the place where if I have to opt in, if I have to go door to door and get the faculty to opt in, this isn't going to work. I'm going to be blunt with you. The faculty are busy people, I'll put it that way. So the model we're going for is that this would be opt out. This would be available to you for whatever reason you don't. I mean, you're already sharing the video from your class. All this does is lets the students search that video more effectively. And the study guide, well, we're looking at models there as well. The study guide, is that a study guide that should be made available and students would buy the study guide? Well, that raises equity issues. So, okay, should the study guide be available to all students? That's the sort of, I don't know the answer to that either. That's sort of part of our research, is trying to understand which models will work in which environments. So the opt-in thing, where I have to go and convince the instructor that this is good for them. Well, the students want this. And I've been doing this 42 years at the university. I just, my patience is gone for trying to make that argument. I hear you. I just, I think it's, well, it'd be up to the institution really. But my recommendation is you make it opt out. If you're, for why, I'm not sure, but you'd be able to opt out.
Interesting. So I have just a purely engineering question. So what is the, like, how are you pulling this off? This seems to be rather sophisticated from an engineering perspective. So what kind of, team do you have prototyping this? Is it predominantly students? Is it sort of staff and engineering? Just curious if you could speak to the team that's building the technology.
I'm a blessed man. I've just been gifted with and your job as a professor is really just throwing out half-baked ideas. Interesting, but half-baked ideas. And to that call, I've just gotten a team. Everything you see here, I've talked about today, everything that's been built is built by undergraduates at the University of Michigan. This is, I feel like the basketball coach, where I get these really excellent players for a year and then they go on to the NBA. Likewise, mine go on to Yahoo, not Yahoo, for God's sake, onto Amazon and Google and elsewhere after that year. But for that 1 year, I am blessed. So this is built by students, and the enthusiasm from the students is astounding. They are literally volunteering to work on this project because they see that this is going to change the way they study. And the enthusiasm, I've never felt such great enthusiasm from the students for a project like this one.
Yeah, very cool. Looks like one more question here in the chat. Is there a way for faculty, this is from Lynn, is there a way for faculty to edit the study guides that are auto-generated?
Ooh, well, there's a way for the students to edit the study guides. The thinking is that we will give them our first guess at what the definition is, a first guess at links and such, but we would like to make it so the students could edit this. If the instructors wanted to take the study guides being generated, and that's a great idea, I just didn't expect it to happen, but if the instructor wants to do that, it would be straightforward to, again, I don't do any of this, I have students do it, but think about ways that the instructor can go in and edit. Again, in bulk, they could upload their glossary of words and definitions. In bulk, they could upload their learning objectives. That would be a first step. And then beyond that, maybe in a particular course, instead of sending them to YouTube, you think, oh no, I want the students to, in my course, to go to TED Talks. I want them to go to Khan Academy or other, you have specific resources you want to make sure the students are exposed to. That's a good idea, to allow the instructor to have the decision, help in that decision tree about what they recommend to the student. It's still the decision of the student to decide which resources they want to go look at, but it would be great if the instructors could give some guidance.
Okay, so I think that does it for questions. Kathy plugged a good reminder in here that the sponsor speed dating sessions are next. So Unison's offering prizes based on points and sessions and exhibits, iPads mini, Yeti cooler, mugs, other things for attending these events. So please, if you have time, starting here, I believe at 2:15 my time, 1:15 Central, we'll have the speed dating sessions coming up. So thank you, Perry. This was really interesting and I think really compelling work that you have here. And I think everyone has the email address here. Hopefully we can help you generate some volunteers that are willing to have some fun here with you and work on this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good summit, everyone.